NASA's leadership is in limbo. Ship 36 explodes in a fireball at Starbase, and nearly 9,000 Starlink satellites now encircle the Earth. My name is Connor, and welcome to another episode of Spaceflight News. Welcome to Spaceflight News. We're starting today with a major incident at Starbase. On the night of June 18th, just after 11 PM local time, Ship 36 exploded during a routine static fire test, sending a massive fireball into the sky and halting progress towards the next Starship launch. This was supposed to be full stack, normal 6-engine static fire test. Everything looked super nominal. Frost lines formed, the tank farm was active, and fuel was flowing. Then, suddenly, a plume of vapor erupted from the payload section. Seconds later, the top of the ship burst open and the entire vehicle was torn apart in 2 violent explosions. Thankfully, no one was hurt. SpaceX later said a nitrogen pressure tank inside the payload bay likely failed. If that is confirmed, it would be the first failure of its kind. The rupture may have damaged pipes, leading to leak of methane and oxygen. Both are extremely volatile. The damage to Macy's test site is obviously significant. It's the only place at Starbase where SpaceX can test upper stages like Ship 36. Until it's repaired, Ship 37 is stuck. That means Flight 10 is delayed, probably until at least late August. But work is already underway on Pad 2. Crews have finished installing the new water manifold on the launch mount, and the site is getting closer to being operational. Unlike Pad 1, Pad 2 will have a water-cooled deck to better handle the launches each time. So yes, this is a setback, but it's also part of how SpaceX works. Testing, failing, fixing, and trying again. The path to Flight 10 just got a bit longer, but it's still moving forward. Now into news this week. In Washington, members of Congress are urging the White House to quickly nominate a new NASA administrator. This follows the sudden withdrawal of Jared Isaacman's nomination, a move that caught both the House and Senate members by surprise. Lawmakers say NASA needs stable, long-term leadership, especially with proposed budgets that could cut the agency's funding by over 25%. Representatives Brian Babin and Senator Ted Cruz are now pushing for an additional $10 billion to support NASA's human spaceflight program. At the same time, the White House has reportedly started reviewing SpaceX's contracts with NASA and the Department of Defense. This request for contract details came shortly after Elon Musk's split with the Trump administration. It's not clear what action, if any, the White House might take, but changes to those agreements could impact both civilian and military operations in space. Over in China, the space agency conducted a successful pad abort test of its next-generation crewed spacecraft, Mangzhou. The vehicle is designed for both low Earth orbit and future lunar missions. In the early morning hours at the Jiuquan launch site, the escape system fired and safely pulled away the capsule from the pad. Parachutes and airbags brought it down 2 minutes later, and an in-flight abort test is planned for later this year. Back over in the West, the United Launch Alliance was forced to scrub its Atlas V launch of Amazon's Project Kuiper satellites. Engineers flagged a temperature anomaly in the booster's purge system, and the countdown was halted. A new launch date hasn't been announced. This would have been Kuiper's second deployment, following the first launch in April. Meanwhile, in Europe, Venturi Space unveiled a new lunar rover at the Paris Air Show. The rover, named Mona Luna, is built entirely with European components and can reach speeds of up to 20 km per hour. Venturi is already supplying parts to US company Astrolab and hopes to gain ESA's backing to fly Mona Luna on Europe's Argonaut lunar lander. ESA also signed a new agreement to explore how it could participate in the proposed Orbital Reef space station. The agency is teaming up with Blue Origin and Thales Alenia Space to study potential European hardware and missions. With the ISS set to retire later this decade, ESA is looking to commercial space stations to maintain its presence in orbit, but with a strong European role in the design and operations. And finally, private space station company VAST has launched a virtual reality experience on its Haven 1 space station. The VR app, which is compatible with devices like Apple Vision Pro and Meta headsets, lets users explore the station and simulate onboard experiments. Former NASA astronaut Drew Fustel, now VAST's lead astronaut, serve as the narrator. Now onto launches this week. SpaceX added 2 more Starlink missions to its tally this week. The first launch took place on June 15th from Cape Canaveral, followed by another on June 17th from Vandenberg Space Force Base. With those 2 flights, SpaceX has now deployed a total of 8,848 Starlink satellites into orbit, nearly 9,000. A day later, China sent a Long March 3B into space from Xishan Satellite Launch Center in China. It carried a communication satellite to geostationary orbit, continuing China's steady cadence of orbital launches throughout 2024. End of June 22nd, a Falcon 9 launch carrying a transporter rideshare mission is still scheduled. That's all we have time for on this week's episode of Spaceflight News. If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow, like, and share, and let us know what space story caught your attention the most. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.